The Daily Jaws 50th Anniversary interview series is a collection of amazing conversations exploring the legacy of Steven Spielberg's screen adaptation of Jaws through the eyes of the fans. We'll be talking to famous fans, shark experts, people whose lives have been changed by the movie, and those that were there that helped to make the film. We'll also be telling you about two amazing organisations that are very close to our hearts. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
It was the discovery of a filmmaker's voice that I think was resonating. To talk to Steven at that very specific moment in time was so touching to me. And I have to say, I was shocked by some of the things he said to me.
Steven Spielberg is speaking about Jaws, and then it cuts to me talking about Jaws. That was just surreal.
The movie I thought was going to destroy me is the movie that made me.
Guys, it gives me a huge amount of personal pleasure to welcome back to the Daily Jaws the incredible Laurent Bouzereau. Laurent, welcome.
Well, you're incredible. Great to see you. Last time we saw each other was in London, so I'm just thrilled to be seeing you again.
I honestly, that was such a memorable day. What Laurent is referring to, guys, is the interview that I was lucky enough to be invited to record for the documentary Jaws at 50, which is what Laurent is here to talk about. That was an incredible day, and I've seen the documentary, and I can say wholeheartedly it is incredible what Laurent has achieved, and I'm so pleased that fans have got something like this to look forward to for Jaws 50. How do you feel about now that it's kind of done? How do you feel about it, Laurent?
You know, it's always hard for me to have an opinion. Yeah, I rely on you and people like you to guide my enthusiasm. But I know that Stephen loved it, and I just saw him recently, and he said I've watched it like 4 times, and so I know that there is enthusiasm there. And you know, I'm thrilled. It was a very hard project to do. Strangely enough, I say strangely because I'm on the heels of doing Faye Dunaway and John Williams, and all those films were massive.
Mm.
And suddenly I'm doing a film on just one movie, but for that specific reason, it was more challenging. And we can talk about it some more.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, again, some of the documentaries that you've alluded to there, Faye Dunaway, John Williams, I mean, they're all absolutely fantastic. You know, I really do hold you in high esteem in terms of just being one of the best film documentarians ever. You know, there's in my mind absolutely no question, and we're very lucky to have someone like you driving the Jaws legacy in this way as well. We've got to talk about the documentary later on, but I'm trying not to talk about it too much because I don't want to spoil it for the people that are going to watch it. But give us a sort of a rough top line overview of what fans can probably expect from the documentary without giving away too much.
Well, I think that number one, the perspective of 50 years is very unique. And to talk to Stephen at that very specific moment in time was so touching to me. I did 2 sessions with him, and I have to say, I was shocked by some of the things he said to me.
Wow.
After knowing him for 30 years and talking about Jaws a lot, I was really blown away. And all the executives involved with the film, they all watched his interview raw, meaning like without any editing, and they wanted to release just that. That's how
Wow.
impactful the interview was, and his enthusiasm for to talk about this, but also his honesty about what the film did to him.
Mm.
I can honestly have one of the sentences in the film that I changed at the very last moment. I felt like the opening of the film needed to set not only the phenomenon and who was part of this film that we were putting together and the different elements and different generations expressing themselves on Jaws,
Mm.
but I wanted to end with a very powerful quote before it led into the title that said suddenly, oh, wait a minute, there's going to be drama. And that's Stephen saying, literally, the movie I thought was going to destroy me is the movie that made me. And that to me sets up you know, something that you always dream of as a documentary filmmaker, somebody
Mm,
spelling out the journey of what this is.
mm,
So, it is about what could have destroyed someone, but instead made him. And
mm.
50 years later, we're still talking about it. And
I'm
so
no, I was just going to say I'm so glad that you've picked out that specific line because I actually made a note of that as well because you've got a few clips from the previous documentary that you made back in 95, but I actually went back and watched that again in preparation for this interview, and I was paying very close attention to Stephen. And the thing that I noticed about Stephen compared to the 95 documentary and the 2025 documentary, he seems to be or have found some peace with Jaws. He seems to be at peace with the experience, and he understands what it, like you say, what it could have taken from him. It could have broken him, but it actually, as you say, there was a lot to take from that. And I think, I don't know, what did you sense? Did you sense a huge change between Stephen from 95 to 2025? I know you're friends, so it might be difficult to answer that question, but did you notice anything when he was talking about Jaws?
I definitely felt uh, uh, um, a much more, openness
Mm,
about the trauma of making Jaws. I mean,
mm,
there's this one story that I want that sort of ends the film a little bit,
mm,
um, that I think is something that expands on some of the ideas that came out of that first interview I did with him 30 years
mm,
ago. Um, I just think that also when I interviewed him for the first time he was coming off of winning an Oscar for Schindler's, right? And Jurassic and that whole. So suddenly there was a complete different perspective on Jaws, and I have to say that it felt maybe from my point of view a little more. I don't want to say superficial. I want to say like more about the making of the film. That's what it's called, the making of Jaws.
mm.
So
Yeah.
I was really going after production stories, and arguably this was the first time anyone involved with that documentary had talked about Jaws
Mm,
in, since it came out to that length.
mm,
So there was a lot to talk about, and it felt surface.
mm,
I felt like I was hitting all the stories you wanted to hear, and it was surface.
mm,
I think now we've gotten deeper with this new film
mm,
that we're actually exploring, the sort of deep feelings that came with making that film.
mm.
Not look. I mean, I felt like there's definitely a difference between the two experiences.
But you can really sense that in the way that, and not just Stephen specifically, but obviously, this is without taking anything away from the other guests. This is definitely Stephen's documentary in terms of his perspective, and the guests helping to fill in that context around that the overall experience. But like you say, the documentary this time round, it seems to be looking, it's almost like my relationship with the movie itself. Like when I first started watching it, it was all about the shark and the blood, the guts, the gore, the action, and the chomping and all that. But then as you watch it decades later and however much later, you start to realize this is not about a shark at all. This is about politics, it's about character, it's about trauma, it's about class, it's about all these different things. I think the direction that you try to push this documentary in makes sense as a companion piece to the original one because this is about the human experience and the reflections of that experience rather than the actual experience itself. It's very, I guess, it's not very easy to talk about an experience when you've kind of just had it. You need a moment to settle down, take it in, understand what it means to you, and I think that comes through with all of the guests. And I think the other thing that blew me away, and I don't know how you did this. I thought I'd seen everything in terms of Jaws, in terms of photographs, videos, everything. How wrong was I? How wrong did you prove me, Mr. Bouzereau? Because there is so much new stuff in this documentary. It is nuts. Now, who's your source? How did you get that stuff? That was incredible.
Well, I mean, that main source is Steven. So I was able to really dig much deeper than the first time around where the archive were not, as organized as they are right now. So that was a big help, and Universal, my own stuff, looking back of continuing to collect and being obsessed. Greg Nicotero, huge influence
Oh,
on them. Wendy
legend.
Benchley, huge, so yeah, it's sort of everybody's collective collections that bring it's crazy, yeah. And Jim Beller also, who
Oh,
is an
love
amazing
Jim.
man, and
Love Jim. Love Jim.
yeah, I could call him also. He is very helpful. He
Mm,
came and met us in Martha's Vineyard, and also going there and meeting with some of the people was really great.
mm.
Um, I had never been to Martha's Vineyard, just full disclosure.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, that was my first time, and it was kind of interesting. Marcus, my producer, and Chris Johnson, our DP.
Mm,
It was just the three of us. We didn't bring any other crew. And so we had a super, sort of small imprint, and at the same time, I just felt it's interesting, Ross. I wanted it to be. I didn't want a big crew. I just wanted it to be just the three of us. I
hmm.
said to Chris, I said, "Can you do sound?" Sure. I said, "Okay." And because I'm like I just want it to be the three of us. And
Yeah.
Chris is amazing, and he shot 90% of the film, and it was so special. I you look back on those things month later, and it is just really truly special to make
What
this.
what was it like being on Martha Vineyard? Because I myself am a vineyard virgin. I'm still yet to go. But
Okay.
being such a massive Jaws fan, because that is like Mecca for Jaws fans, like what was it like being on Martha's Vineyard and being in those places where the movie was filmed and recognizing those locations? What was that like?
Oh, it's like entering a movie. Suddenly you're living inside the film, and I just kept humming the music. I had my earpods and kept listening to the score, and I had done a montage of all the locations from the film, and I was
Mm,
looking and just not believing that stuff still looks kind of the same. And and again, the thing that was really weird was going to places, and you would see in restaurants France, you would see photos from the making of the film back in the day.
mm,
Uh, and it'd be like all crinkled and old and weathered. But so you had all those photos everywhere. So you really feel that this was an event that impacted that island in a way that
mm,
was really profound. And the store, going to the store and meeting those people. I mean, it was very moving. And at the
mm.
same time, it was interesting. I was going to go to the bridge, and we we were on our way to the store first, and the bridge was empty. And Marcus said, "We have to do it now. We have to do it now
Yeah.
because it just looks exactly like the film." So the shots you see was like before anybody got there, which kind of debunked the fact that people are constantly jumping off of it. But uh, uh, um, it was really great to be able to improvise. That's why I wanted a very small crew because if you have several cars or whatever, like suddenly you're a company. But like
Yeah.
here, like just almost like a small imprint, and we just like were grabbing moments, and
Mm,
we had beautiful weather, and then we go to restaurants, and you were just feeling the spirit of the film, of what it was like, because the island kind of looks the same.
mm.
And I was walking by on the first night, and there were picket fences that had been destroyed. I took photos of it. I think I sent that to Jim Beller and said, I've arrived, So it was kind of funny, yeah.
Has your relationship with Jaws overall changed since doing this second documentary?
I hope this doesn't come off pretentious or anything,
Hmm.
but I feel that after all those years of being inspired by something that meant so much to me, that was trans transformative, that I can own a little piece of it, that I've made a tiny little contribution to it.
Hmm.
And that's the dream, that something that has meant so much to
Hmm.
your sensibility as a person, as someone wanting to be an artist and wanting to make movies, that you're able to give back to that
Hmm.
team, including Steven, and say, I get it, and say, I can proudly say that through this film and the previous one I made and my book on Stephen, that I own a tiny little bit of that, that experience. And I hope it
Hmm.
doesn't sound pretentious, because I'm far from being a recognizable figure, or, I'm not comparing the contribution that one makes to cinema, like
Hmm.
Stephen and all the artists involved. But in my own little way, I feel, I can die happy.
You know what? It doesn't come across as pretentious at all, and I'm sure people watching and listening don't feel that way either. And I share a lot of that sentiment. But having been sort of running the Daily Jaws now for its 10th year, it's about being able to give back just something to Jaws. And whether that's keeping the legacy alive, posting a funny meme, making a discovery on a new behind the scenes photograph that maybe we haven't seen before. And I feel very blessed to be counted in that group of people. And there are so many fans out there that in their own way keep the movie alive. But you and I we've just done something a little bit different. That's all. It
Yeah,
doesn't make us any different. We've just done our own little thing, and hopefully people are still going to be enjoying your documentary and the Daily Jaws for many years to come.
I have a story that I want to mention, because that will make you feel good. So
Oh, okay.
when Stephen watched the film, there was something that he said. He said, I wish you would really highlight the box office phenomenon that the film was. Did anybody talk about this? And I said, yeah, Ross Williams. And I put back that quote in. It wasn't in it originally, because I kind of felt, like numbers scare me. I was like, oh, suddenly, you're giving stats, and I was like, okay, let's focus on the emotion, not, statistics.
Mm.
And Stephen Wright is like, no, no, no. You have to also mention not only how much it made, but with inflation. I said, Ross gave me that quote. and and
Oh
so
man.
didn't have to do for a second. I'm like, wait a minute, did he really hit it on the mark? Because Stephen knew the figures,
Mm.
and yeah. And you remember, like, I was like, should I dub it? Should I, whatever? But no, it was perfect.
Oh
So
my God.
thank you so much.
It's
And no
honestly,
one
it's
mentioned it. No one else had mentioned it of all the interviews I'd done, because again, like, I tend to feel like sometimes statistics like date something, but it
mm.
was appropriate in this case, and it was my bad for not including it the first time.
It is that's amazing for two reasons. One, it's one of the most surreal experiences of my life, having watched the preview that you sent me of the documentary, where Steven Spielberg is speaking about Jaws, and then it cuts to me talking about Jaws. That was just surreal, and just the fact that Steven even knows who I am. That's just that's just insane. So I mean, again, it's all about that gift of Jaws, no matter how it kind of finds its way, whether it's a poster that you've bought from a store, or if you've been invited to take part in a documentary, or someone's bought you a new t-shirt, whatever it is. It's a gift that keeps on giving, and it's 50 years of giving, and I'm looking forward to the next 50 years. I mean, if we're still around and we're doing this in 50 years time, Laurent, I will be drinking to
I
your
don't
legs. I
think
don't
so.
know. Well, this is the thing. That's why we've got to make hay while the sun shines. So
I'll be in
let's
the I'll be in the Guinness Book of Record if that is the case. Forget Jaws.
Jaws at 100. Oh my God, that would be amazing. Hey guys, it's Ross. I hope you're enjoying this week's episode. Bruce and I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about a couple of the organisations that we've been working with, and also some of the new products you can find in our store. Minorities in Shark Sciences, or MISS for short, a non-profit founded in 2020 that champions diversity in shark, ray, and marine sciences. MISS creates equitable opportunities for historically underrepresented communities through hands-on programs and believes that diverse scientists bring diverse ideas, driving the innovation essential for ocean conservation. Representation matters, and MISS is making sure the next generation sees a place for themselves in marine biology. Learn more and support their mission at missalesmo.org. The mission of the Tourette Association of America is to provide help and hope to those affected by Tourette syndrome, tic disorders, and associated conditions through awareness, research, and support. It's the only national organisation serving the community and works to raise awareness, advance research, and provide ongoing support to patients and families impacted by Tourette syndrome and tic disorders. To this end, the Tourette Association of America directs a network of 31 chapters, 83 support groups, and recognises 18 centres of excellence across the country. It's a non-profit organisation and is extremely close to the heart of not just Jeffrey Kramer, but also his family. The Daily Jaws store is home to some of the world's most exciting Jaws products, including screen-accurate barrels and tanks, a chalkboard shark shadowcaster, a yellow barrel koozie, an orca transom and 3 yellow barrel keychains, and much more. Visit store.thedailyjaws.com. For non-US orders, please email orders@thedailyjaws.com. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show. When was the first time you saw Jaws, and what do you remember about that experience?
Well, I'm from France, hence the accent, which is real, not a Hollywood thing. Um, saw it in France, and it changed my life. I mean, it was just one of those movie experiences that completely changed my perception of what cinema could be. And my bedroom was covered with Jaws stuff. I mean, from the gigantic French movie poster to all the lobby cards. And I was just obsessed, but obsessed in a way that was very defining. I felt that I had found a voice through that film that really spoke to so many things having to do with uh, um, the power of images
Mm,
and the power of storytelling and how you could actually enjoy a film several times and discover new things. Listen to the score. I remember my dad bought me the score here in America. He used to travel back and forth, and I'll never forget him opening the suitcase and there was the Jaws soundtrack. And so it, your Jaws has to do with nostalgia, but for me, it has to do with almost like a first love.
mm,
Uh, and it sounds rather extreme, but it's like this discovery of something so unique that you're going to spend the rest of your life trying to reproduce that experience.
mm,
And that happens so rarely, but it happens when you're super young and you've not been exposed to the world that much. And sort of movies, I grew up in a small town outside Paris, and
mm,
I wasn't exposed to the world. I didn't watch the news. It was the 60s and the 70s, and so movies and what happened in movies became what could be a reality, and sometimes it could be very scary.
mm,
And so it would awaken fears in you that you didn't know existed. It would awaken things in you like passion that you didn't know existed.
mm,
So Jaws was at the center of all this. And I just remember going, it was kind of funny looking through Steven's archives for the film. I found all those newspaper clippings, and there was a French newspaper clipping, and there was at the bottom the movie theater where I would go see all the movies of the time in my little suburb, and so I was like, wow, that's crazy. I'm entering many questions, I'm sure, but yeah, it never quite left me that and you know that's it's like Jaws became transformed through the years. You know, it becomes like comfort food. You're
Mm.
like, you know, when you're deploring the movies you're seeing
Mm.
in the present, not to be cynical, you go back to those experiences, and Jaws is definitely part of it.
The fact that you've used the phrase comfort food is something that a few of the other guests that this series of interviews has featured have said that. They've said that Jaws is like comfort food, and I think it's a wonderful analogy. But you've expanded on it because, in my mind, hearing you talk about that, it makes me think that Jaws is almost like your favorite restaurant. So it's not just, a bit of comfort food, but it's going to get the very best of what you love. Even though you've got these super, amazing lots of choices out there, you can go and eat at any restaurant you like, but you always go back to your favorite one. And Jaws seems to be that for so many people. I mean, why do you think Jaws resonates with so many people on such a high and wide level?
Well, it's a big question. I think there are several reactions. You know, there are the reactions of the context of the times, and I think um, at that time, coming off of Vietnam, coming off of uh, um, a lot of things going on in America, including Nixon,
Mm,
we're no longer trusting authority. And the core theme of the film is like this massive threat is coming and we cannot trust authority.
mm,
And the three men sort of represent one side of the equation, trying to destroy the menace that the shark represents. And that wasn't lost on people back then because, as you know, there were full page ads of political cartoons
mm.
um, relating to Jaws, and think Universal said it's a movie too. So, so, so there was that impact that people were actually identifying with, and that's true. And I think we can sort of not bundle it up, but with the disaster films of the time, like The Towering Inferno, well, you know, authority decided not to put the right cables, and now you're trapped.
Mm,
Poseidon Adventure now, you know, all those movies were really feeding into fears of the moment. So I really think that Jaws had that going for it.
mm,
I think that it's also the realization of a passage between the old Hollywood that was still somewhat present in the 60s and the beginning of the 70s, and the new generation of filmmakers, like
mm,
literally going out there in the element. There was a realism to Jaws. The water, the beach, the sand, that literally made you feel like I can relate to this. Whereas if it had been done 10, 15 years earlier, you know, they would have been on the soundstage and like The Old Man and the Sea,
mm,
and it wouldn't have hit. It would have been artificial.
mm,
So you know, like when they talk today about, oh, that realism, that grittiness that we see sometimes in war movies and all that, that was Jaws. I mean, literally, people were relating to it as a real thing, even though the shark arguably did not look real. It's fascinating. I mean, I remember, you know, my aunt, my mom's sister going to see it when we were, you know, vacationing on the by at the beach,
mm,
and she came back traumatized, you know, and but it was just going beyond um just the entertaining factor of being scared and it being a phenomenon.
mm,
Uh, Even potentially on a subconscious level for people who don't necessarily pay attention to
mm.
who directs what, you know? And suddenly that name, Steven Spielberg, just felt like a savior to cinema. It felt like, wow, here's someone who's going to change Hollywood. And he did.
Mm,
And he continues to do it. So, so I think it's the perfect storm, so to speak, of an incredible story. Let's not forget the book. A lot of people had read the book the year
mm.
prior to the film. Um, and it's a great book. Personally, I love the book, and I know it's different, and I know it has subplot that don't necessarily belong in the film,
Mm,
but it's an incredible read. And from that day on, I read everything by Peter Benchley. I
mm.
mean, literally, I have, The Deep, The Island, and Rummies, and Q Clearance, and even Beast, and White Shark. I mean, literally, I became obsessed with. And it was kind of the same year as Carrie came out, I think also in 74.
Mm.
Uh, uh, so suddenly you had all those authors also emerging, brand authors, right? Stephen King was becoming branded horror, and Peter Benchley was ocean stories and everything from lost treasures to pirates and sharks. And that was a phenomenon as well from the
Mm.
literary world. So Jaws was benefiting from the sort of movement that was happening. I hope I'm answering your question.
You're answering about 20 of my questions in one
Okay,
answer.
good.
This is amazing. But there's so much there. I mean, just by asking one question, we've been able to sort of pack in so much into one answer. And like one of the things you highlighted there at the beginning around, the Nixon era and the distrust in authority. I mean, when I first saw Jaws when I was sort of 5, 6 years old, I thought it was about a fish that wanted to kill people, as we all do. But then as you grow up and you start to revisit these movies, you have that comfort food moment. It's like, oh, I'll watch Jaws for the 50th time or whatever it is. You spot something new. And one of the things that I spotted as I was getting older was there was a real distrust in authority, quite rightly so, particularly in the 70s in America. And that's what Jaws, or part of what Jaws is trying to tell us, because right at the very beginning, and again, I don't know many people that would agree, but I think possibly the most important scene in Jaws is on the ferry, where Brody is persuaded not to do the right thing, and it's about redeeming that moment for the rest of the movie. It's just incredible, but that's because he was pressured by being an outsider, which we can all feel. He was new to the role in terms of being on Amity, and he's being persuaded by the three sort of main authorities, if you like. So the press, the mayor, and the doctor. And it's just like, how many times does that happen in real life that we don't know about?
I just love what you're saying because absolutely, the notion of guilt is a thematic we can all relate to. We've
Mm,
all, have had regrets, and it's about decisions and the impact of decisions. And look, Nixon made some decisions that led to, his demise, and Vietnam was a big decisions as well.
mm,
So people are feeling the weight of what those decisions are.
mm,
The thing that resonates with me, I've done that exercise with several of my favorite films, is looking at them and looking for something I've never seen before. And in relation to Jaws, the thing that was important for me was the notion of home. And I hit on it in the film, which
mm,
is basically a man who's left his home being New York and is trying to make a new home in Amity, and everything is getting in the way of that happening. And it's the story of an outsider of a and again we can all relate to that to some degree. And I just love that in the film, that theme is echoed several times when the two guys are on the pier trying to catch the shark with the
with the holiday
Thanksgiving roast.
roast. Yeah.
With the, yeah. I didn't mean to say Thanksgiving with the roast. Their last line is, "Can we go home now?" And of course, when the three guys are on the boat, they're singing about home. And the
Mm,
thing that is fascinating to me is that notion was also what was happening on the set of that movie. They
Mm,
all wanted to go home. And so it's one of those cases where the actual thematic of what this film is about is, which is creating a new home, uh, um, coming home, that whole notion,
mm,
uh, is actually also the theme of the making of the film. And Steven not being able to send the crew home because the filming is taking forever. So I think it's a unique experience in film history where the actual power of the storytelling is becoming the mantra of the crew. Let's go home. We can't wait to go home. I want to go to bed, you know? And I don't think that's ever been really discussed in relation to Jaws. And I'm very proud of having made that sort of discovery for myself as a
mm,
viewer. Uh, and I also related that to the first 10 years of Steven's career. And you and I, we've talked about that, which
mm,
begins with Duel, a man, who arguably could never go home. And his home is actually being threatened. Sugarland Express, all of his movies up to E.T., which is the combination of those 10 years with E.T. Found Home. So, Jaws is part of that canon
mm,
of a filmmaker whose heart is really his home and cinema is home. And when I said that to Steven, he said, you know what? I guess I've never been far away from home, which is so touching and
mm.
so real and so true and continues to echo, I think, today.
It's so true. And I think, I guess it's something that's been picked up by a lot of filmmakers because a lot of filmmakers seem to talk about home or use home as a metaphor for a lot of their stories in terms of either returning home, protecting the home, creating the home, whatever that is. And closely regarded to that is the family as well. And when you look at just some of the human moments in Jaws, they are very specifically geared around family. Talking of family, Laurent, there was someone that wanted to drop by and just say hello. Bear with me.
Oh my God.
Are you bad mouthing Jaws? I mean,
No,
come on now.
it's you, Jeffrey.
Look at you. You
Hi.
dressed up for this. Look, he
Oh,
put on
really?
the best t-shirt. I love this.
You look so great. I love you, man.
Oh,
This
I love you too.
is my
This
favorite.
man, Ross, is so talented. He should be directing big movies
He
for
should be running
sure.
countries.
Well, I'm not sure about that. He'd be too free. Too free.
Oh my God.
Oh, you look good, my dear.
You always look good. And you're wearing
Uh,
your signature hat.
I'm
Doesn't he
wearing my
usually wear
hat,
it?
so yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Let me tell you something. This Jaws 50th documentary we did, he was just fabulous. He worked it out. It's a rare talent that can
Mm,
look at a movie, a life, and everything, and put it into a narrative that everyone can follow. That's a gift. It's not
mm.
easy. And he's the best of the best. I mean that. It's
Wow.
a good compliment coming from me, young man.
I know, but
I'm
it's
the
hard
last to
to fail
call
when
me
we're
young
talking
man.
about Jaws, right? I just feel like it's so hard to fail. But I was telling Ross that it was a challenge because, when I had done John Williams or Faye, who've had like amazing and long careers, suddenly to do something that's just focused on one film and something that's been done by myself and other people, and there's been a lot of books, and there's been, how do you find the sort of new ideas, and I think it's a challenge, but we made it because I
I
was,
get it. And yet there were so many elements to this. Tell the popular
yeah.
embrace of this movie, the shark preservation, because evidently Stephen was really upset afterwards that people were out killing sharks by the tens of thousands. Wendy
Mm,
eventually has devoted her life to that. And there's so many elements to this, how it's changed marketing of movies, how it influenced a generation of filmmakers and continues to do so. I mean, there were so many aspects to this, and he had to fit it into a short amount of time. And I love this man. I do the phone book with him. So there. Thank you for letting me come in and hijack your little interview here. I apologize, but
No,
I'm
this is
grateful.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful to you, Jeffrey. I love we talk to each other all the time now.
All the time. Yeah, my dear
It's
friend.
the best.
Truly. And rarely do you meet people like this that you become friendly with immediately. And I just felt it.
Yeah.
He's my kid. I got to take care of him.
Yeah, you better.
Bye, you guys.
Cheers,
Bye.
Jeffrey.
Love
Take care,
you.
mate.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Oh, he's the best. You
He
know,
is. Yeah.
one of the things about doing the kind of work I've been fortunate to do for the past 30 years or something, is meeting incredible people. And
Mm.
I was telling Stephen also, I said, thanks to you, I have met, the most amazing people, the most amazing people. And I am very grateful. It's rare that in your line of work, and I know you do as well, uh, meet people who inspire you, people who've had an incredible, life and have made
Mm.
contributions. And sometimes some of those people have been forgotten. And
Yeah.
I'm happy that I could document some of them, before they left us.
Yeah. This is part of the reason why I'm recording a series of interviews as well, because I just think it's, to your point, it's just really important to document people and acknowledge people who have been a part of something very special like Jaws, but also give them the opportunity to voice it from their point of view, and not just, going through their version of how the production was, but how did Jaws change their life? Who did they meet? How did their life turn out? And I just think it's a really important thing to do. Laurent, we're coming to the end of the interview, and I've got some controversial slash fun quickfire questions for you. You up for it?
No.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Laurent. Thanks very much, guys. Tune in next week. Okay, so the first question, and this is based on the first movie. Out of Chrissy, Pippet the dog, Alex Kinter, the estuary victim, Ben Gardner, and Quint, if you can only save one, who would it be and why?
Well, it would be Chrissy because she's the first victim, and I would hope that it would discourage the shark from trying to do anything else.
You're too nice, because that then means we don't get the movie. Ah,
Correct, correct.
shortest movie ever.
But Ben Gardner keeps his head on his shoulder.
Laurent, you're such a sweetheart. Oh my God. Okay, next question. Did they need a bigger boat?
Absolutely not. Because without this boat, we wouldn't have that classic line that gave birth to so many classic lines in cinema. Moving on.
Okay, good answer. Okay, this is probably my favorite question. I've had so many great reactions to this because people have just literally stormed out of rooms just getting angry about this question. Given everything that happens in Jaws, how is Mayor Vaughn still the mayor in Jaws 2?
Well, that I think speaks directly to the theme, which is we can't trust authority, right? Um, I think that in Jaws 2, a scene that was deleted actually was when they all vote to fire Chief Brody. He was the only one who voted for him to stay on, and he would have sure been fired after that as well. Why is he still the mayor? Because he's Murray Hamilton and he's a great actor. And I think that would have been a mistake not to have Murray Hamilton in another movie. So I'm glad that they had no sense of of right or wrong in Amity.
I love that. So he's still the mayor because Murray Hamilton's awesome. I love that. That's a great answer. That's brilliant. Laurent, that's the end of the quick fire questions. You can relax and you can breathe again. So that's cool.
Right.
So I guess the final question for me is it's the one I've been asking all of the guests, and I love the answers because it really reveals what Jaws has probably given them over the years. What, why, what's the legacy of Jaws? Why are we still sitting here 50 years later, talking about it on Zoom, producing documentaries about it? Why? What is it about this movie?
Well, why are we still talking about the Mona Lisa? I mean, it's a defining uh, cinematic masterpiece that defines really truly what cinema is all about and what cinema should be about. But it's also a literary phenomenon.
Mm,
It's also something that speaks to a specific era in America, and that cannot be ignored. And I really think that it's a film that not only defines cinema, but Hollywood would not be what it is today without it. And I think we all know it. So
mm,
we owe a debt, a gratitude to Jaws in so many ways. And I really hope that the next generations will pick up the baton and continue this on
mm,
because it's well deserving. And without a phenomenon like Jaws, many of the great films that we had since then would not exist, including films that are being made today.
mm,
So that's why it's still relevant. And it's interesting looking at films that were made either that same year or around that time that were hugely successful and are not in anybody's memory at all today. And you look at them today and you realize, ooh, you cringe, right? There's not one cringing moment in Jaws. You know,
mm.
even with the shark looking, somewhat fake, it still has the same impact. So yeah, it is like this ultimate work of art, on a screen that will never go away.
Mm. Oh, it is. It is a work of art. Laurent Bouzereau, it is always a pleasure to see you and to talk to you and just to listen to this beautiful, eloquent answers that you give to these questions of mine. Has been a real treat for me and also I think a lot of the followers and the fans that are watching and listening. Guys, I've been Ross at the Daily Jaws speaking with our good friend Laurent Bouzereau about his new documentary, Jaws at 50. Until next time, I'll drink to your legs and I'll bid you a fond farewell and adieu. That's it for today's deep dive into Jaws, the film that turned beaches into no-swim zones and created the summer blockbuster. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow, rate and review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, just when you thought it was safe to stop listening, there's plenty more episodes to come. Please be sure to check out the work of Minorities in Shark Sciences and also the Tourette's Association of America. That's it for now, guys, but I'll catch you next time. I'll drink to your legs.